So I've been struggling to answer a certain question that some people have asked me in the past and currently, and that is, what's your method to taking your photos, and how did you come to the point of editing in a certain style? And I think I struggle with this is because I don't have an answer. I don't have a method. I don't have a 3-step program. I don't have whatever it might be. Now, I'm sure I can go and break it down and be self-conscious about how I do certain things, but I feel like that kind of takes away from some elements of creating. Not that it's bad to do these things, because maybe you can discover something else, but I think for me it's just that I've focused so much on trying to figure that out that I've lost touch of the creative process and the doing of some sort thing. Because I always thought I had to have some profound or enlightening answer for the people who ask, and in turn, I was also asking the same question. And I remember when I started photography, there was no rhyme or reason as to why I took a photo or how I edited it. And that was the beauty of discovery and the beauty of just doing and trying and not having any sense of the rest of the world and what they were doing. So I guess you can call it that I had an innocence. And I think that is something that the world wants to strip away from you in any aspect of your life. And I'm trying to not get back that innocence of an artist, but the wonder and the curiosity maybe of those moments in my life. And so it got me thinking on making a video as this one to kind of go over the stories and the hows and the whats and the whos behind some of my photos. And I decided to choose 3, and 3 was very hard to pick because I wanted to choose 5 and then 10 and 15, because every photo I look back on, I'm like, oh yeah, that's something I did, or that's a memory, or I remember this, or I remember that I had to go through that thing. And so I chose 3 for right now, and they're very dear to my heart and very dear to my journey. And it's in no way to be like, this is how you should do photography, or this is how, this is the only way, or this is the wrong way, or something. This is just my journey, and it helped me go back and reminisce about those times to see how I've grown, because I've been in the roughest, like, lowest pit of creativity in these past few years. That just have drained me. I became so manufactured in what I do that I've lost the love and the want and desire to do what I do. I used to look at my camera and be like, it's just a tool now. It's not something I want to grab and go and explore and do some awesome things with it. I just hated it. But I'm slowly coming back to this. I don't know what it is, but I'm slowly coming back to something, and it got me really excited. And I have so many now ideas of things I want to do, and it's great. But before I go off on a tangent, I need you to grab a beverage. I have the glorious iced Americano. I love it because it's simple and it's really hard to mess up. But if you have something else, go ahead and grab that. Grab a snack. Do something that will get you engaged, ready to sit down for some storytelling. Because I have 3 stories for some 3 photos. So let's get into it. All right. So the first photo is called The Shire. I know, cliche, unoriginal, but actually kind of perfect, because it really reminds me of Lord of the Rings and The Shire and this mystical, like, I don't know, feeling that you get from looking at it. And it just feels kind of out of this world, and it just has this fantasy kind of vibe to it. But that's not what makes it special for me. What makes it special for me is how I got the photo and where it was in its attachment to my life. I remember coming out of the car from the hotel that we were staying at, my dad and I, in Hobart, Romania. This is where this is. I remember coming out of the car and just it was like the most perfect weather it could be. Kind of drizzling, but not sunny at all, overcast, but like the grass is wet, but not like drenched. And there was like a fog or a mist in the air. And I remember my cousin and I, we were walking around, and we kind of took a different path than my dad did and his friend, and we came to this spot. And I remember the incline, or the steepness of this hill was like, it felt almost vertical, especially on wet ground. And I remember it had my little camera, my Rebel SL1 with this giant 70-200 that my uncle had let me borrow for the trip. And I remember just seeing this hill out in the distance. And I remember just looking at it in my, like, without the camera, looking at it and seeing the frame in my head. And I don't know how it happened, but it just happened. And I turned that lens all the way to 200. And it took me, I think, over 50 photos to finally like get the RHODE that winds up tack sharp as much as I could for, it was a really old lens, and for my camera to get. And I remember I was just zooming in for this RHODE. Like I needed to make sure. And until I got it. I wasn't even sure if I got it. Even when you zoom in, you never really know until you go to the computer and you put in the laptop and you're like, Lightroom, and then you're like, oh, this is great, or this is the worst. But it was, even if I didn't get the photo, I would remember that was a place where my mom grew up, or her mother grew up, and that's where like my family is from. And we came back to the hotel that we were staying at, and I couldn't have been quicker to pull out the laptop and to import into Lightroom and to just see that it, like after the 50 photos I went completely through, that there was the one that was, I didn't have to resize or crop or anything. It was just perfect. And the exposure was perfect. The sharpness, aperture, everything was just where I wanted it to be. And I didn't know what I needed. I just knew that it would look good. And then it was the quickest edit of my life that I ever did. It just came to me. I didn't know how. I didn't know where this came from. I just knew that I had to get this photo to embody exactly what I saw and felt in that moment. I used only basic adjustments for this photo. Just the regular exposure, contrast, whiteness, shadows, highlights, whatever. Like it was just that, because I didn't know how to use the HSL tab. I didn't know any of these things. I just know that I was playing around. I was so excited and I was looking, and then it just came to be in like 5 to 10 minutes, and I exported it and it was perfect. And I know that sounds so cliche, and it's like, oh my gosh, you had the perfect photo, but like it just was the perfect photo. And today it still is one of my favorite photos I've ever taken, compositionally, technically, but also emotionally. Every time I look at that photo, it's printed in my house. I have it printed in the cafe that I did another video about, and every time I see it, it brings me back. I can literally smell the air, feel the wetness of the ground, the shoes that I was wearing, the smells around me, the cold air hitting my face, like everything I knew. And most importantly, because my mom wasn't on that trip with us, she stayed home because she had to stay with her mom because she was ill. It just lets me like have a piece of my mom as if she was there. And it's so important to me. And I think as we'll get through the next two photos, like that's a lot of what photos and art needs to be. And not that it has to be this rule. Some of it can just be technical and just look pretty and everything, but I think you get the most fulfillment individually from something like that. So that's the first photo, The Shire. If you like the name, let me know. If you don't, maybe keep it to yourself. Or give me a suggestion. That'd be cool. On to the second one. Okay, I need a drink. I am parched. This, I called it Abandoned because well, it looks like the van's abandoned, right? You can see it. But also, this one's not so much of like a emotional attachment to it as like I had with the previous photo. But what also still attaches me to this is the photo itself and the story it could tell. A little backstory on the photo is actually this is the same location as the other photo that we just looked at. I haven't moved my feet from where I was standing. I just pointed the camera elsewhere. It was like kind of looking through the camera, and I saw this, and I went, I'm landscape, gotta go vertical, because for some reason I like the verticality of like I can just show kind of more in that way, and kind of hone into the subject there. I again didn't really know what it is that I was looking for in these photos. This was probably about 3 to 4 years ago when I did this, and I was just discovering more and more and more about photography. I actually went on this trip with my dad very grumpily, like I didn't want to be there, but this is like, this place like made me like love that I was there and want to do more with my time, taking photos and spending time with my dad and everything. So it's more of the location that's been really sentimental, but more about the photo. So the photo, I knew I wanted the subject to be the van, and I knew that it looked mysterious and it looked kind of off-putting, but also very, you know, there's something about it. I don't like using the word there's an energy coming from it, but there's kind of a sense of feeling that comes from the photo of what's the story behind this? Like even in real life, like why is that there? This one wasn't as easy for me to edit because I didn't know exactly how to edit it to get the feeling that I felt or wanted. See, when I do any editing on my photos, I try to edit it to the personality of the subject. Could be a person or another thing, like a person, obviously. Person, subject, van, food, whatever, and try to pull that personality out and put it into the colors and editing and composition within the photo. Most photographers do this as well. But I couldn't figure out what that was. I remember just playing with a bunch of sliders, putting the laptop down, coming back to it, more sliders, laptop down, more sliders. And then I touched the dehazing slider, and that was the slider that changed it all. Or at least I think it did. Because when I pull that slider, I think up is the direction it was, to show in the fog and the mist and this like volumetric something. It showed texture. It gave it a little more oomph and layering. And I'm like, that's it. And for me, one of the most cinematic photos I've taken. It really can tell a million different stories from it. And I think as someone who was like wanting to like tell these stories, that all in my head is like, that can be open to interpretation for something like this. And it was a great experience just as someone who's going through being like an artist, which is weird to say because I don't like to consider myself an artist. I just like to make things and do things. It's just a tremendous feeling of like relief that I was able to still create something, and just feel kind of set apart in my own mind. So that is abandoned. I don't think that's the best word for it, but I think that y'all might have a better idea. So let me know in the comments again, for all these three photos, what you should think the name of the photo should be. The title of the photos. What do you think they should be? Because I don't know how to do that. But I'd love some help. Alright, on to the third one. Alright, for the third one, I call this Garden of the Gods. Really unoriginal when you know that this is the Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs. But I think they named it because it really feels like it, right? So I kind of had to keep it in there. So I call this Garden of the Gods for the obvious reason that we just talked about. And it was a very recent trip. It was actually 2 months ago, in April. My wife and I were called to go fly out to Colorado to do an engagement photo shoot for a couple that were doing a wedding here in Illinois. It was the first time we ever got to do this, and it's hopefully many more to come. Just because we love the traveling, and we get so excited that someone would be willing and entrust us to come out and do their photos there with them. It was honestly one of the best experiences, like as someone who has their own business, but also just being able to see the world, you know, and travel a little bit and see this beauty. So we landed in Colorado Springs, and we had a few days of time to spare, but we only had a little bit of time to be in Colorado Springs as we had to head up to Boulder. So we wanted to still see some stuff here because we heard it's very beautiful. And the Garden of the Gods was a 14-minute drive from wherever the airport was. And we're like, well, this only makes sense for us to do. So we drove up, and we were just like, whoa. Like, this is different. Because I've seen the mountains in Romania, and they're, whoa, this is different. But I haven't seen this side of what mountains or structures or just these rock formations that they could be. And so this photo is my favorite photo from the time we were there in Colorado because of the composition. One, we got the three structures, right? And it's framed in such a way that kind of brings them together and focuses on it. So compositionally looks right, technically it looks right. The colors really feel kind of this desert red. I don't know, it's a different kind of color set for me that I edit, but I really love being able to dive into it. So on a technical standpoint, that's why I love this photo. But on a very personal and serious note that we kind of mentioned really early in the video about me being in this deep pit of like not knowing where I was creatively and what I should be doing with my photography and even my life, you know, because I just felt like a fraud in some ways, is that I was now there enjoying this landscape. And not because of the photo, but because I was enjoying the landscape, and most of all, enjoying it with my wife. It was the first time we got to go see the mountains or something so spectacular like this together. And just to share that memory and have it. And she's also a photographer with me as we do our weddings. And for her to like see what I have seen before and get her excited about this was just so awesome. And that's why this photo holds so much to me, because it's kind of the one step out of the pit for me. And I had to have some serious conversations with myself, with my wife, and she's helped me tremendously, you know, with God. And, you know, just, again, this internal thing. Do I keep doing photos? Do I stop doing photos? Why am I doing photos? Who am I doing photos for? And I know people say, like, do it for yourself. I think it's deeper than that. Like, you need to be able to love the thing that you're doing. But in the sense of when I hope they say do it for yourself, it's not because you want to be selfish and not have other people peer into your art and what you see. But for the fact that the thing is, it's for those things. So people can find the enjoyment from it and maybe invoke the same kind of feelings you had or other. But it's not the success or the amount of people that you get from it. It's rather this, it just is. There's no anything to it. There's some photos that I don't think are at all worthy of printing. But for some other people, they find this photo to be their favorite. Like, not this specific one, but others, you know, other photos. Because art isn't about, oh, you're so successful because you sold this many photos and this and that. And, like, that can be a metric, but not everything in life has to be a metric. Some things do. But what's more important, I think, is what I'm learning, is that it's the growth, right? It's easy to say, and it's easy to really do a TED Talk about, and it's really easy to get inspired when someone says something like that. But it's the hardest when you have to like sit with yourself at night thinking, what am I doing? And I love this photo because it allowed me to almost forgive photography a little bit, and stepping closer and closer and closer to forgiving it fully. and not forgiving photography in the sense that it's photography, but the way that I've treated it. This, again, I don't give myself the credit of saying this is a gift and I'm so talented based on my own merit, but what people have told me and how I feel proud of my photos, of course. But being able to create something for myself that has spoken to me in such a meaningful way, like I'm able to move forward and really finding out how I function. And I think that's so important. You know, it's not to say this is how I do it, I don't care what other people say, and I don't live for others. Like, yes and no. Yes and no. And just kind of sit and ponder on that. It's yes and no. And I'm just so glad I'm able to share these photos with you. I know it got really, really personal at the end, and I just really am glad that you were able to sit here and listen to that and be able to listen to what I have to say, and that's so humbling, and I really appreciate it. But enough of that somberness and the seriousness. I'm just really glad that you guys are able to be here and to see these 3 photos. You know, the Shire, Abandoned / Not Really Anything, and the Garden of the Gods. Let me know what they should be in the names. Maybe you like one. Maybe you think, maybe this will work better. Or like, what have you thought about this? Please let me know what you think that the names of these photos should be. And if you want to see more videos like this, I have a whole list. I'm so excited. I have so many videos that I want to do. But if you want to see more like this, where it's just chill, and we're just hanging out, drinking some ice Americano or whatever else you're drinking, and just talking, let me know. I'd love to do that. It's so much fun, and I get to connect with y'all, and I just want to thank you for all of that. So be sure to like this video and to hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of, I guess, me, which is kind of weird, but if you want to see more of this, that'd be greatly appreciated. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.